The Respect for Marriage Act has been passed in the Senate, which is the biggest hurdle. Now it is expected to pass in the House, and then Biden will sign it into law. We'll get into the specifics of this. Of course, the general goal of this is to protect interracial and same-sex marriage, and Republicans, more than I think I would have expected, went along with it, but we'll get into maybe why that was in a second here. But first, this is it passing in the Senate.
Sir, 61. The nays are 36. The bill, as amended, has passed.
Mr. President, what a great day. What a great day.
Okay, that was Chuck Schumer's voice there saying what a great day, which I think anytime we can get proper action from our government, we should at least have a little bit of a celebration. But I do need to address something about this that I think is being misunderstood from people and is actually, unfortunately, making this not as good news as it could be. And what I mean by that is even myself, and I am aggravated about this, didn't make a clear specification, partly because I don't think I was read in enough on this specification earlier on in the conversations about this bill, that this is not protecting federal same-sex marriage and interracial marriage by making it required to be legal in states nationwide. That's not what it's doing. So it's not doing the same thing that the case or cases in the Supreme Court do, which is to say, as a state, you do not have the constitutional right to say that same-sex marriage is illegal in your state, okay? So if Obergefell, for example, were to be overturned in the Supreme Court, states could still make same-sex marriage illegal. As I've talked about, the reason why I give less attention to interracial marriage is because even the furthest right governments in this modern United States we live would not make that illegal. So I think we can set that aside right now. But with same-sex marriage, many states absolutely would make that illegal if Obergefell was overturned. And so, again, the way this is talked about leaves that out. It's still good. It's still the correct action, and it's still protecting the rights of people by federally recognizing any marriages within states that type of marriage is legal, if that makes sense. So as long as there are states in our country that allow same-sex marriage, which now there always will be, all of the blue states and some of the red states, the federal government recognizes any of the marriages that come out of those and any of the marriages that were done in a state when it was legal, which is still significant. But let's read about this. This is from CNN, kind of making this specification. Let's start with the positive. Republicans and Democrats are coming together to protect same-sex marriage from the Supreme Court. The Respect for Marriage Act codifies marriages and came about amid worries among Democrats that the same conservative majority on the Supreme Court that took away the right to abortion will target same-sex marriage in the future. And Clarence Thomas did indicate that. The version that overcame a filibuster in the Senate passed the Senate Tuesday. A dozen Republican senators from across the country voted with Democrats before Thanksgiving to limit debate and move forward a final vote. And then, as I mentioned, it'll go to the House and likely pass, and then to Joe Biden. First, the bill does not require all states to allow same-sex marriage, even though that is the current reality under the 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges decision. Rather, if the Supreme Court overturned Obergefell and previous state prohibitions on same-sex marriage came back into effect, the Respect for Marriage Act would require states and the federal government to respect marriages conducted in places where it is legal. So does that kind of make sense? If you got married in a state that changes the law, your marriage stands. And we have to recognize, as we should, of course, and it should be every single state, but if at some point it went back to where some states is illegal, some states is legal, the federal government is recognizing the marriages that come from the states that it's legal in. And so I guess in theory, the unfortunate compromise will be to get married in a state where it's legal, and then you'll have your marriage recognized federally, but not in the state in which you live necessarily, or that is not legal in your state to do, right? So reading this, understanding this definitely bothered me, because I was hoping for a day where the Supreme Court decision becomes irrelevant because the federal government completely across the board protects people's right to get married with who they choose. That has not happened. And so we need to continue to fight to make sure that it does eventually. But that also makes clear why Republican senators were able to get on board with this, and why it was able to get passed. With that being said, there are some things that protect religious views, and that was kind of a sticking point for Republicans. And so let's look at that for a second. Republican supporters have emphasized the elements in this Senate version that protect nonprofit and religious organizations from having to provide support for same-sex marriages. Quote, I'll be supporting the substitute amendment because it will ensure our religious freedoms are upheld and protected, one of the bedrocks of our democracy, said West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito in a statement after helping break the filibuster. So now you see, okay, it wasn't quite making sense. Why did this many Republicans get on board and be able to overcome the filibuster to pass something protecting something that so much of the Republican Party has stood against for so long? Well, it's because it now protects the right for entities to, in part, if it's based on their religious beliefs, discriminate against people on the basis of sexual orientation and not be required to provide services for gay marriages, for example. So that's where things stand. There's still more to be done. Hopefully the Supreme Court case won't be overturned, but it still is a good move, and it still is impactful in people's lives. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before any of the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get access to an extra full show every Saturday that only members can see, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley, and there is a link in the description.